Going to open up with the prayer. Nitkadesh Teti Malkuthak Nekwe Sevianach Ekanada Shmeya Appar Howlan Lachmesunkanan Yamana Washwoklan Howbain Ekanada Hanan Schwakan Lahayawain La Talinsiona Ella Pasan Menbisha Mithol Tilachi Malkutha Haila Tishpochta La Alam Almin. Amen. Well, as I told you last week, that I would probably make some differences in the comparison between the Aramaic text and the King James Version and most really translations of the Bible. There's one thing I have to make clear, I've said it many times, is that none of us own, I should say most of us do not own a Bible. You say, oh yes, I have it on my shelf, I have it on my desk, I have it in my bedroom, I have it, and all in the hotels, they give you the Gideon Bible there. No, what you have is a translation of the Bible. And that's what makes the difference. A translation. To say you have the Bible, the actual Bible, you need it in the biblical texts themselves. In other words, you would either have to have the Hebrew, Aramaic text, and even the Greek. The Greek text is a translation from Hebrew and Aramaic. So we all own translations, and it's from the translations that we get the misunderstanding. And here's something else. That's just the first point. The second point is this. Who translated the Bible? Who brought it into English? And what texts did they use bringing it into English? So regardless of that, whether they use the Hebrew Masoretic text, which I have here right on myself, and when they use a certain Greek version, none of them hardly ever use the Aramaic. Dr. Lamb's the only one that used the Aramaic text of the New Testament. Here we have someone learning the language Hebrew that's not their own tongue, and you have also someone with Greek. When I took basic Greek for the New Testament, that's all I have was just basic Greek. Aramaic is totally different. I'm still learning it from a book. Okay. You don't get the full culture. You don't get the nuances. You don't get any of that because you're learning it from another language and you're trying to bring it into English. Where is it? This is the first time that we have a complete Bible done by a translator from his own language and from his own culture, a culture that, according to British scholars and American scholars who went into that area and among the Assyrian people in the mountains of Kurdistan, which was owned by Turkey at that time. We're talking about in the late 1800s, early 1800s they went. Dr. Ashale Grant went into this area. He was a Presbyterian minister and medical doctor who went into this area. And this is the first time we have a translator translating from his own tongue and from his own culture that kept the most ancient cultures. Dr. Wigram, who was a British scholar from, of course, England, and I have his book too, Dr. Wigram, and he states that never in all the lands of the ancient world, in Iraq, Iran, the most ancient customs were kept because they were isolated in the mountain vastness of Kurdistan, which, as I told you, was was a part of the Kurdistan Mountains, which was owned by Turkey, which was, of course, considered owned by the Turkish Empire. And they called that area to the Garden of Eden. So he made a translation from his own language. We have no translator. Even when I translate, I'm not translating from from something I was born with. I had to learn it from Dr. Lamsa. And I can also teach it. But the fineness of the language, where I learned the fineness of the language and the culture of the language and the psychology of the people and the background, was being with Rabbi Lamsa. Rabbi, remember, is the word for rabbi. That's the Hebrew people got it from the Assyrian people, and they called the term in Hebrew rabbi, but it's really rabbi. A rabbi, it means my great master teacher. So, like the doc, we say today, and doctor so-and-so, doctor, but that's what that meant. And there are about 12,000 differences when you make comparisons. And this is what I mentioned in the last class that I had. And, you know, I don't know, most people read it, but I think it's very important. A.J. Holman Company, in the introduction to the Bible, see if I hope, let me get it right in here. In the introduction, they quote something from the Aramaic patriarch of the Church of the East. I met him. His name is Mar Ishe Shemon. And that in English would be, the word Mar means Lord or sir, and the word Ishe is in English, Jesse, and Shemun is Simon. So his name is Jesse Shemun. But the reason he has Shemun, because he's following the apostolic flow, and they changed their names. And he wrote a letter, and he put it into the introduction to this Bible right here. It's very short. I'm going to read it to you, then I'm going to make some comparisons. Patriarch of the East, Modesto, he was in Modesto at this time when he wrote the letter, April 5, 1957. With reference to your letter concerning Lamsa's translation of the Aramaic Bible and the originality of the Pshit, the text, as the patriarch and the head of the Holy Apostolic Catholic Church of the East, we wish to state that the Church of the East received the scriptures from the hands of the blessed apostles themselves in the Aramaic original, the language spoken by our Lord Jesus Christ himself, and that the Peshitta is the text of the Church of the East, which has come down from biblical times without any changes or revisions. Interesting. And then he signs it, and it says, by grace, Catholicos, Patriarch of the East. That is fantastic. All right. Now, most of our Bibles say this particular, I checked it on all the different Bibles I have right here in my office here. In Job 12:16, it says, the tabernacles of robbers prosper, and they that provoke God are secure, into whose hand God bringeth abundantly. In other words, God helps robbers out and helps them with their thieving. Can you imagine that? I can't. The Aramaic text says, the tents of robbers shall perish, not prosper, and the assurance of those who incite God, because there is no God in their hearts. Then in Job 31:10, this is Job. He's talking because he's being accused of wrongdoing, and that's why all the problems he was having. He lost his children in storms and fires and all kinds of things, and he lost his cattle, and he lost his home and all that. And his four comforting friends, we always say three, but he had one more, try to comfort him. And this is what they were saying. They were accusing him. Well, there must be something wrong. You've done something wrong in your life, and that's why this has happened to you. Then he gets angry and he speaks up against them. And what he says is, if I've done anything wrong, then now this is the Job 31:10. Then let my wife grind unto another. Grind unto another? And let others bow down upon her. You know what this is inferring? Let her grind unto another and let others bow down upon her. Let me tell you, some of my English translations I have up there from various backgrounds make it even worse. They talk about her having intercourse with these men, because that's what this seems to imply here, practically states. But the Aramaic says, then let my wife grind meal for others, and let her bake bread at another man's place. Not get in bed, but bake bread at another man's place. And the other one says, let others bow down upon her. And some of these English translations tell you something else, which I won't repeat. I just did a little bit of it. But you know, when I was in Mexico, and I did a lot of missionary work in Mexico, I also lectured when I was in Linares and when I was in Monterrey and in Spanish, and I lectured to them on some of these very scriptures in their own Valera translation of the Bible. Notice I said translation, which is in Spanish. And I have here a complete Spanish translation from Aramaic. I know the professor who did it, because when I was working with Dr. Lamsa in San Antonio at the church there, and had Lamsa with me, this Dr. Hernandez came to visit with Lamsa because he was finishing his translation of the entire Bible from Aramaic, because he was a student of Dr. Lamsa, and he came to see Dr. Lamsa and talk with me, and we did. This Dr. Hernandez and the Professor Hernandez. And some of these things he changed, and some of it he didn't. He needed to do it over. And can you imagine the patriarch saying such a thing about his wife? When I was in Mexico, now I'm talking about when I was doing missionary work in Mexico, I would get up early in the morning, sometimes around 5 o'clock, and I could hear some of the women patting down the masa, that is the corn flour, patting it down and baking it in a special places there at another man's house. You could hear it all, the whole, because this was in the small town of Linares, which was close to Monte Morelos. And in that little small town there, you can hear all the women making fresh tortillas for the day, and they make it every single day. They did the same thing in the Near East. That's why in the ancient world, and they would make the bread just for the day. That's why in the Lord's Prayer we say, and give us our needful bread from day to day. That's exactly what it says. When we translate it into English, we just said our daily bread, which needful bread, that's what it was talking about. That's why they use the word daily, but it's not the word daily. The word that's used there is the bread of necessity. That's what it's used. And so our needful bread from day to day, if you're doing it from the prayer. So again, not translated exactly correct. And now here's another one. Psalm 7:11. I always remember this one because it's 7:11, which was a number easy to remember. It says in the King James Version, God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. Every day he's angry with the wicked. And not only that, he's not satisfied with that. He's got to judge the righteous too. God judges the righteous. They missed it. They missed the whole idea of what the psalmist was saying. What it says in Aramaic is God is a just judge or a righteous judge. Not he's judging the righteous. He is a righteous judge or a just judge. And what does that mean? It means because in the Near East, I've heard Dr. Lamsa say this many times. In the Near East, he says so many judges were judging and they wanted bribes. They wanted people to bring things to them, bring them food, bring them money, bring them whatever they could, sheep, or anything like that. And what the psalmist is doing, making a comparison between human judges and God. And that's why he says God is a just judge or a righteous judge. He doesn't accept bribes. You can't spoil God. You can't do that. You cannot tempt God. Can't do it. And that's what he's saying in the Aramaic text. God is a just judge. And the other half, is he angry every day? No. And the Aramaic says, and he is not angry every day. It's not he is angry with the word wicked's not even there. It's just that God is not an angry judge. He's a just judge. That's what it's saying. He's not an angry judge. He's not like the judges that we have, the human judges that open the books. And let's make sure, you follow the books. And that's why we have lawyers. And that's why having to work with the books. This is completely different. Now, I've only given you 3 scriptures. And then there's the Lord's Prayer. Do not lead us into temptation. God's going to lead you into temptation? No. And let James in his epistle says, don't let any man say that when he is tempted of God, for God tempts no man. Literally, it says God tempts no one. Doesn't even use the word man. This is God tempts no one, absolutely no one. So when you read then in Genesis, when it says, and God tempted Abraham. What? God tempted Abraham? And it says here in James says, God tempts no one. But you see, in Abraham's dream, he's dreaming that God asked him to take his son, his Ichidiah, his unique beloved son, his only son that he had that is counting. His first son didn't count through a bondwoman of his wife Sarah. No, you don't take that. You take your Ichidiah, that one that's going to inherit everything, and you bring him on a mountain to sacrifice. So he is dreaming that God is tempting him. And he learns from this dream, talking about Abraham, that God tempts no man and God doesn't want any human sacrifice. No human sacrifices. And yet in the New Testament, God sacrifices his son. God then wants human sacrifice. And the only way God could forgive the sins, our sins and everyone else's sins of the whole world, only one way he could do it, when his son died and shed his blood on the cross, then God could forgive. No. It doesn't make sense. You see the contradictions in the Bible if you go by theology and if you go by what we're taught? No. That's why he said, Jesus didn't say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? No. He says, El, Lamana Shwakten. My God, this is my destiny. To what an end you have kept me, preserved me. What? To fulfill a destiny. That's what it means. If you can translate it literally, that word shwak, which means to forgive, to allow, to permit, to untie, all that's the word shwak. When it's shwakten, literally, you don't say the I at the end, shwakten, which means, oh, this is wonderful. This is some of the differences when people say, well, what difference is Aramaic? It's just another. But at least it gets closer to the original, but it's still a translation. What Lamsa did was give us a translation. When even though you have the translation from Aramaic, it is a translation. It is not the actual Bible itself. As you see, lots of times when I've read the text to you from Aramaic itself, you see it's a little different, little shades of meaning in those words. Like John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. Well, the word miltha, is usually feminine. Miltha is a feminine word. And yet, when they did the verbal system was put in the masculine form. It should have been in the feminine form. Even when you do verbs, it has to be in a feminine form if it's working with a feminine noun. And it was in this case, and yet they made it masculine, which means it has another meaning besides just the word. It's not incorrect to say word, but they want you to see it has a larger meaning. And that's why I translated energy, mind, energy. It has to do with a certain frequency and energy that is God. And that's why it goes on to say that the milk and God was that very miltha, was that very mind energy, because it is a part of God's nature and being. It's powerful, just powerful when you understand it, when you're reading it in the original language. When you're reading it, you get something more even than when you get it in English. And Dr. Lamsa did a splendid job. There are thousands and thousands of differences. I brought some in here, and it says here, oh, this is amazing. Where it says, about a camel's going through a needle's eye, should be a rope, and not through a what they talk about, an entrance at the gate in Jerusalem. No camels bent down to go into the door. That's all made up by missionaries. That is not what the scripture is referring to. Lamsa translated, it's easier for a rope to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, which means that a rich man has got to learn to share his goods and to be a true person who shares what he has. He was not shutting out rich men from the kingdom of heaven. But the other says so. All right, then another one here. I already did the tabernacles of robbers. Oh, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Wow, what a qualification to become a disciple of Jesus. No, that's not correct. It's in Aramaic, he who comes after me and does not put aside his father, his mother, his brothers, and his sisters, and his wife, and his children, and even his own life, cannot be disciple to me. In other words, you have to let everyone go, just like my first boy who went on to the university. He had to let his mother and father go, so he went to another university in San Angelo, and then he went on to Lubbock, and he went to all these different universities, and he had to leave us. He had to set us aside. He didn't hate us at all. He loved us more because we were paying for it. So he didn't have to go work. Oh, there are at least 12,000 differences. These are just a few. Let's see what I got here. Oh, this is interesting. Then the Lord said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun. Then the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. What? This is the Lord speaking to Moses and telling Moses to take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, the sun? take all their heads and put all their heads there where they would after you hang them. No, the Aramaic says, then the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs, the head tribal men of the people, and expose them to the wrongs they were doing before the Lord in the daylight, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from the descendants of Israel. Did you see what was happening here? The chiefs were the head tribesmen of each tribe. There was 12 tribes. And you get the chief ones because they were misleading the people to go and do things that they weren't supposed to be doing. So expose them, not hang them, expose them in the daylight, not hang their heads up before the sun. That's exactly what it said. And I checked all the others too. They didn't get it right as well. I think that's a good one. Hold the people land show, give the prince. Oh no, I don't want to do that one. And upon, let's see, it says, hear the word of the oh, hear this word, O king of Bashan, that are in the mountains of Samaria, which oppress the poor, which crush the needy, which say to their masters, bring and let us drink. That's Amos, the 4th chapter and the 1st verse. The Aramaic says, not kine, K-I-N-E, but hear the word. Hear this word, O vicious men of Bashan, who are in the mountains of Samaria, who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, and who say to their lords, bring and let us drink. Big difference. This is why we don't understand the scriptures and all the problems we have with it. And oh, this is my favorite one. And then I think I will stop because I want to get to your questions you may have. If you have any questions, don't forget to write them in and I'll get to them. When it has the Q&A, okay? I love this one. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time. In other words, you can defraud, it says, don't you defraud one another, except it be for a time, that ye may give yourselves into fasting and prayer. After you fast and pray, then you can go ahead and defraud. And come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your inconsistency. What does it say then in the Aramaic? The Aramaic text says, therefore, do not deprive one another, except when both of you consent to do so, especially at the time when you devote yourselves to fasting and prayer, and then come back together, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your physical passions. In other words, he's saying, keep that love and that intimacy between the husband and the wife, keep it going, except when you want to do it for fasting and prayer. Then for that little short of time, then don't do it, but then get back to it right away so that you're not overcome with physical passion. And that's in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter and the 5th verse. And this is to be the last one. I love this. This is in Corinthians also. 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter and the 36th verse. The King James says, but if any man think that he behaves uncomely towards his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will with his virgin. He sinneth not, let them marry. What? What does the Aramaic text say? I don't think Paul says such a thing, but that's what the King James says. Okay. Here is the Aramaic text, Dr. Lamsa. If any man thinks that he is shamed by the behavior of his virgin daughter because she has passed the marriage age and he has not given her in marriage, and that he should give her, let him do what he will. He does not sin, let her be married. He's talking to the fathers who have virgin daughters and they didn't get married. They passed that marriage age. But if she wants to get married and all that, go ahead and let them do it. So he was talking about Eastern customs. Eastern customs. Paul was talking about what to do because the church in Corinth asked them, what do we do? What do the fathers do about if he has a virgin daughter, But the King James didn't catch on to that and didn't understand the cultural meaning behind what Paul was dealing with. These are just a few. There's a few pages. I used to give this away. I don't have it anymore. I just found this the other day, and I think I have about 30 in here, maybe 40, in this little pamphlet showing the differences. And it's very interesting. Okay. And so, I'm going to allow more time for your questions tonight. So let me get to them right away. Let's see. Oh, Rebecca. Hi, Robbie. It's Rebecca. I'm here. Good. I'm glad you're here. Okay. I love what you're this is from Andrea. I love what you are describing regarding Abraham dreaming of God wanting him to sacrifice his son, and it is not. Well, it was real in his mind because in other words, he was feeling this. This is a good question. In other words, he was feeling that maybe God would want his child because all the other gods were requiring human sacrifice, especially the firstborn boy. So God was teaching him through this dream, through this vision that he was having at night. It was a dream vision. And that when he went to sacrifice his son, he saw the ram caught in the thicket there in the bush. His horns were caught in there. So he took it and sacrificed that. So he knows that in his dream, he knows God would not ever ask for human sacrifice. He is learning from his dream, correct. Can you guide me to where he was dreaming this? Yeah, it's in the Bible here. Go to the life of Abraham, where he says he goes to, I think Dr. Lamsa has a little title above the chapter where it says Abraham brings his son to be sacrificed. Let me go. It's starts with the 12th chapter and Abraham and Lot, the battle of the kings, 14. Then he gets the idea to have circumcision. And then Abraham pleads for Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. It's in chapter 21. Genesis chapter 21. The sacrifice of Isaac. Isaac is born, chapter 21, and then the sacrifice of Isaac here. And it has a title. He has a title right above it. The sacrifice of Isaac. Chapter 27. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. Hello, Robbie. My question is coming from the book you and Dr. Lamsa worked on, The Aramaic Light on the Gospels of Mark and Luke, page 268 and 269. The emphasis is put on the word today in the Aramaic text. I'm just trying to gain more clarity between Jesus and the thief. In other words, today I say to you, you will be in paradise with me. In other words, I'm making this statement today that you will be with me in paradise. That's what he's saying. Not today you will be in paradise. It's no, today I say unto you, you will be in paradise. Do you get the difference? The emphasis right now, I'm telling you, you will be with me in paradise. Okay? I hope that is clarifying. If it's not, write me another note saying not clear. When we are setting a trap for prayer and we are listening, how do we pray for others without asking for something? Well, you know what? That's excellent. That's an excellent question. I usually don't ask for something. In fact, I never ask. If I'm working for someone, like for instance, if someone needs a certain healing, I don't say, oh God, so-and-so needs a healing in their lungs or needs a healing here and needs a healing there. This is an excellent question, Adrian. I don't do it that way. What I do is I am open to allow the Spirit, because prayer means you are open. You're an open trap. You're going to trap the energy of God. You're going to trap, it'll come forth from your own being because you are a part of God. You see, prayer is your communication with God that you have within your own heart, within your own emotions, within your own being, in your own soul. And so what I do is I open myself to allow the Spirit to come through to its, because it's really above us too, not just solidly in us, to flow through me, out from me to the person that needs something. And that's what I do. And I'm telling you now how I do my private sessions with God, and how I bring people into it. And I see whatever, if I know what is wrong with them, I deal with their soul and spirit in my prayer. And I'm not asking God to do it. I am a child of God working with God for the healing for that person. This is understanding your sonship. This is understanding why you are a child of God. You work with God to bring healing to that particular person, or to bring that need into expression. I hope I'm making this clear enough. You see, because we don't realize we are all sons of God. I don't care whether you're a man or a woman. Just because of the Aramaic, they use the word descendants. We're all descendants of God. That's a good term. That way I don't get caught up with male or female. We all are descendants of God. All of us are descendants of God. And as a descendant, I have a right to flow with God for the healing for that person. It comes by Spirit. This is what it means. But you have that right. So when it says we pray for others without asking for something, I don't ask. That's how I do it, because I know I am a child of God, and the Spirit of God abides in me, lives in me, expresses through me, and therefore I will call that person's name out. I will see with my eyes of vision. I will see that person well. Like, for instance, look at that tremendous healing I had in the hospital. Plus, that isn't the first one and only one that I had with that young man. I don't want to tell you his name, but I don't even know if they're watching tonight. But I was told by the Spirit when I was praying for him, he had meningitis and encephalitis, and to put my hand on him, but I didn't obey what I felt on the inside, because I knew he was in pain, and I knew my fingers on his forehead would bring him more pain. So I didn't do it. Then his mother came and got me just before I was about ready to get on the elevator to go down and get out of the hospital. she grabbed me, brought me back in, and what she did then, she said, "Oh, my son asked, oh, if you would have touched him." I said, "Okay, I wanted to do it, but I was in pain." And then when I did, I only used 3 fingers to touch lightly on his forehead, and wham! It came through like lightning. It hit me and it hit him, and he was healed instantly. And his mother was a witness, and she was on his right side and I was on his left side, and that healing took place. And I had another one when this was in the Laguna. This is when I was in California, in the Laguna hospital, where she had a growth that she could not eat. She kept regurgitating, and they took x-rays, and there was some sort of growth in there, in her intestines, between her stomach and something, and she couldn't hold it, and they wanted to operate. And I came up there when I found out she was there, and I went into the hospital there, and they allowed me in. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." And she says, "I want you to put your hand on me." And she was wearing a 2-piece thing where a string were tied, and she untied herself around the belly button and wanted me to put her hand right where the growth was, and in the inside. It was all on the inside. There was no growth on the outside of the body. And I said, "No, I'm not going to touch you. Not going to touch you. I'm going to just put my hand over your area where that is." And I did. And the moment I did, and I put my hand over the area, I did not touch her, would not touch her, because she was lying in the bed, and even though she untied it and wanted me to touch her in there, I didn't do it. And I just waved my hand over it, so just above it, for the energy to work and remove that growth or tumor or whatever the heck it was. The doctors couldn't even tell what it was. They could just saw this blob that was in there, and it would not move. And so I waved my hand over it, and she was scheduled to be operated, cut open to get that whatever had grown in there out. And she passed out. She went to sleep. And then I moved my hand, and I was getting ready to leave, and she woke up, and she says, "Oh, that felt so good." I said, "I didn't touch you, didn't touch you." She says, "I know, but it felt good. It got through." I said, "Then you cancel that operation you're to have in the morning." She says, "I will, I'm okay." So what they did then, instead of the operation, they did another x-ray, and she was totally clear and clean, and she didn't have to get cut open to get removed whatever was there. Well, what happened? What was that? It was because it flowed through. I'm open. I'm open. That's what prayer is. You don't trap prayer. You trap God. You trap that energy to flow through you, out from you, out to the other person, from above in your own heart and out to that other person. That's how healing is done. My own son, who was having I was having a difficult time. I had to preach Sunday morning at the church, and Saturday night I had injured my back. I twisted it some way, and there was no way I could get to a chiropractor on Saturday night when I had to be at church on Sunday morning. And my boy, because he see me work with people, he see me work with the church people and for healing and all that kind of stuff. And he was only 7 years old. And my wife came to me. I was in the bed and I was in pain. I had all kinds of stuff on my back, and nothing was taking it away. So my boy, well, my wife actually came into me. She says, "Danny wants to pray for his daddy." I said, "Well, sure." I said, "Bring him in here." And Danny then came running down the hall and into my bedroom. And he said, "I'm going to pray for your daddy." I said, "Okay, do it, son." And so what he did is he slipped his hand under my back. He slipped his little hand under my back. And he says, "Now close your eyes, Daddy." And I closed my eyes. And he kept his hand on my back, and it got hotter and hotter and hotter, and it was burning me. And what was so cute, his I peeked a little bit to see what he was doing, and he had his hand under me, and he was doing his head like this, and his eyes shut, and really working hard for my back to get well. And my back got red hot, and and then relief came. And then he all of a sudden he stopped. I didn't tell him. I was going to reach my hand down and pull his hand out of the way because it was getting too hot. And when I did, just as I was getting ready to grab his arm to pull it away, he already took off and then ran out of the bedroom and, playing just like he is, just like little boys do. And my back relaxed and I went to sleep. And the next morning I got up free of pain and everything. And we all were having breakfast, getting ready to go to church. And I said to him, I said, Danny, what did you pray? What did you say? I said, look, I'm well. He says, well, of course you are, Dad. He just cracked me up. He says, of course you are, Dad. And I couldn't, I could see his little face right now. And he was just like, well, it's a matter of fact, it had to happen. And I said, well, what did you pray? I wanted to hear what his prayer was. How did he say it? He said, oh, I just told God. I just said to God, Daddy's always helping people. Now you help him right now. That was his prayer. That was his prayer. You work with right now. And he put his hand on my back because he's seen me do that for people. And for people touching with their heart if they were having heart problems, or if the heart was beating too fast and they were having fibrillation and stuff like that, I would work for them. This is the congregation in my church, in Calvary Missionary Church in San Antonio, Texas. And that happened. What did he do? You think it was because God listened to him and said, oh, Daddy does it all the time for people, now you do it for him? You think God heard that? Oh, yeah, he heard it all right. But that wasn't it, because my boy is a child of God, and he believed it. He had faith for it. And I mean, he did. He expected me to be well. And sure enough, I was. But that's how it happened, just like that. So in regard to what you're asking, how to pray for others, I don't do that. I don't say, oh God, help them this, or I think what I do is I allow that spiritual faith and power and energy to flow through me out to them. And I do this every single night for people who ask me to pray. I do it every single night. And generally, I like the people to know I'm doing it so they'll be open at that time when I am working on them in prayer. That's what Jesus, he was the Son of God. He was the Son of God, and we're all descendants of God. All of us are, and we all have that. But some have certain, Paul talks about some have certain powers that can heal certain things, and some others have certain powers that can heal other things, and some have, we all have different gifts, but we're all children, descendants of God. That's how I do it. I don't know how else to tell you, but that's how I do it. Okay, here's another one. Rebbe, we got someone who's who's using Yiddish. Rebbe, but closer to the Aramaic. Rebbe. And actually in Aramaic, when you spell Rabbi, you spell it R-A-B-I, one B. It's a one B, but when spoken, it's a double B, because it has a certain vowel on the B, on the resh, on the R, and it's a pataha, which doubles the B in sound, but not in writing. So when you say Rabbi, you're saying R-A-B-I, Rabbi, or Rabbi, either way you want to say that. It's a closed A, so it's Rabbi. And here you have it in this Rebbe, is closer to the Aramaic. Thank you for another enlightening class. Guys, that people ask what happens to a person that isn't women. I need to get the question fully. Oh, there it is. To a person that isn't, I think that means religious. What about Dr. Lamsa after leaving this world? That isn't religious. What about that isn't religious? Well, they don't have to be religious. I prayed for people who have no religion at all. If they want me to, it has to be with their consent, or I do not do it. Do not. Okay. How can you deflect from the family members who condemn, judge when they claim biblical justification in doing so? Well, you just bless them. Just bless them. Say, because they're quoting, remember, they're quoting a translation. The biblical justification is a translation. They probably are misunderstanding it. And you can't, and since they don't know, they're not exposed to it, don't condemn them. They can't help it. This is what they've been brought up with. This is what they've been told by their pastor, or told by the priest, or told by them. They're going by something they're totally ignorant of. You have to let them stay in their ignorance, because they're not going to hear you anyway. So you just bless them and you love them, and you just have to say, well, this is how I see it now. And we can still love each other. We're family, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and if that doesn't mean anything to them, then it's too bad. Let them stew in their own juice. Being told that a certain song that was playing was allowing evil influence in my home, I followed the true Aramaic translation being taught, whereas my family members follow the Western style Christian religion, translation, dogmas, and all. Yeah, well, you still have to bless them and be good to them. And you are free. And then, just treat them well, because they don't know. They just don't know. Okay. Please share Aramaic word and concept for without form, as in Genesis 1:2. I was going to teach on that tonight. Genesis 1:2. Without form and void is what it says. The actual Hebrew words and Aramaic words were two ancient gods. And therefore, when I translate that, form, without form and void, empty, you put in the Hebrew. Tohu, wohu. Yeah. Those were ancient gods. I do not translate it that way. I translate it, and it's okay, without form and empty. What it's trying to say is, it's not the present form that we know now. So I always translated, these were the gods of chaos. So I translated as chaos, and the earth was chaotic, or was in chaos. Chaos. I was going to speak on that, then I remembered I had to do these comparisons. So it means chaos. That's all it means. In other words, it's not, something had happened that the certain forms of the earth that we have now did not exist then. And therefore, what you have to know, it's that God at the very beginning created, or God created the heavens and the earth at the very beginning, is how I would translate it from Hebrew and from Aramaic. It's like I know the Hebrew in there, and I know the Aramaic. In Aramaic, it's Bereshith bara. No, I always get Hebrew and Aramaic mixed. Bra is Aramaic, and in Hebrew is bara. So it's Elohim bara. And here in Aramaic, it's Elohim Allah Bra, created the heavens and the earth at the very beginning, or in the very beginning, or at the very beginning. Either way you want to translate it, which means before time was reckoned. The minute I say beginning, I start time. The minute I say beginning, I start time. So it means before the reckoning of time. But what condition was it? And the earth was in chaos. What the Spirit of God was hovering. That is, it was vibrating. It was vibrating, is what you have to say. It's going like this. The energies, the frequencies were vibrating over the chaos to bring order into expression. So the first thing that God says, let light be. In English, we say, let there be light, but actually, literally, it says, let light be. And light was, because light is going to come from the being of God. God is nothing but pure light. And that was the first day. That was the first day. And the word day, and it was evening and it was morning. The writer is simply using day as a unit of creation. That's all. It didn't take God 24 hours and it was evening and it was morning. This is a story telling us how that God was responsible. And God spoke the word. He brought it in. He brought order in through the word coming from divine mind. Divine mind spoke and brought divine order. Let there be light. In other words, enlightenment was first. So then it goes on, and it's a whole spiritual revelation of that first chapter in Genesis. It's beautiful. Thank you for your question. Please translate and elaborate on he was priest after the order of Melchizedek. Well, now you've gone to the letter of the Hebrews. And it talks about, in the 7th chapter of Hebrews, it talks about Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is a compound name. It's a compound name. And it's really Malka. Melch is the Hebrew meaning king. And Sedek, it's two nouns put together. That's why it's a compound noun. King of justice or king of righteousness. Sedek. That's what that is. He was the priest. And Melchizedek, and Jesus was after the order of Melchizedek because Melchizedek was a tribal priest. And this is what the writer to the Hebrews is saying, that Jesus was not ordained from the Aaron priesthood. He did not descend from Aaron. That Jesus was like Melchizedek, after the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was some Semitic priest that had been in Mesopotamia and had come into Canaan. And when he was in Canaan, he brought evidently some tribal people with him and his tribe grew, and he became a tribal priest. So Melchizedek was a tribal priest. And our translation is wrong about Melchizedek, where he says he had no father and no mother. No. It means we have no recording of who his father was or who his mother was. No recording. In other words, there was nothing recorded about Melchizedek. Why? Because the people felt he was a holy man. He just rose up as a holy man among the tribal people coming from Iraq and had settled in Israel. And so he settled in that territory, and that became his with the tribal people he was with. He was a tribal priest. And this is how he is comparing Jesus, that he is like a high priest, but not like Aaron, but after the order of Melchizedek. In other words, he was on his own. How did he become a teacher? Jesus was a peasant. Jesus was a man from the country, from Galilee, and he was a teacher in Galilee, a holy man from Galilee. This is why they didn't like him in the South, because he was Galilean and he wasn't from the South, nor did he graduate from any school in Jerusalem. How could he say this? And in John, they actually say that about Jesus. He has no letters. He has no letters. In other words, no graduation. How can he read? He doesn't know how many letters. He can't read. He can't, but he could. He did. He learned it up there in Galilee. And that's why this is what the Hebrew writer, the letter to the Hebrews, what he's writing in the 7th chapter, is saying, now our priest is like Melchizedek. That he was a tribal chieftain. Now Jesus is going to become the chieftain of a new set of people from all kinds of races, from all backgrounds, and he's going to be like Melchizedek. And Melchizedek was a priest who handled all the problems, everyday problems of the people, as well as serving the Most High God. Isn't that wonderful? I'm so glad you asked that question. Let's go on. Dr. Lamsa says that prayers for others help them to understand God's love and open their hearts and minds to receive his blessings. Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I see it. I still bless other people. I bless them so their minds will open. Hello, Robbie Errico. It's a pleasure to see you wearing Fellowship of the Spirit shirt. Yeah, we're right here because we're all in Fellowship of the Spirit. I am a graduate of the school in 2000 and a student of Elaine Thomas, yes, where I first met you. You have been a mentor and a blessing in my life. Many, many thanks. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's go on. It's time for me. I've gone over. In your healing others, are you allowing the energy of God to flow through you and holding that person in perfection to which God created them? Yes. Could the one who is praying be the conduit of energy of God's healing? Yes. Therefore, it is necessary to give power to the ailment or disease I'm only giving it to that person himself, as I told you, to their soul and to their spirit. I don't think about the disease. I think about the soul and the spirit, and that's what I'm giving it to, the perfection there, so it can perfect itself in the body of that person. You want more detail on how I do it, but I don't tell all of it. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Errico. All right. Thank you, and I will see you next Wednesday. And I appreciate your offerings you're sending in for these Wednesday night classes. And by the way, I put a new set of videos to go on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and go to the playlist there, I have 2 new videos there. I did some of the differences from the translation, and I also did a little more detail on the words of Jesus on the cross. El Lamana Schwachten. I went into more detail on that. I did special video. You're welcome to it. And don't forget to see the ones that I did with Rebecca. Rebecca, I know you're there. I don't know why you're not here. I can't see you. You should be on because I have you as part of the panelists here. So I don't know what happened. I'll have to see how to do that next time. Okay. Love you, everyone. Stay healthy, stay well, and I'll see you next Wednesday.